Hello and welcome to our next YouTube tutorial. In this video we're going to build the hamburger menu with some nice effects. This project will be built based on HTML, CSS and a little bit of JavaScript. So as you can see, we have here a landing page with full screen background image, and at the top right corner there is placed hamburger menu icon. If I click it, then the icon will be transformed into X and Navbar will be displayed from the right side. Here we have a couple of navigation items, and if I hover over them, then we will get nice hover effects. Okay, so in this video you will learn about how to create all of this stuff. Let's go ahead and start building our project. In VS Code I have a couple of files for HTML, for CSS and for JavaScript, and also we have here a folder called images in which we have an image for background of landing page. You are able to download starter files from the link in the description. Okay, let's go ahead and open index.html file. I have prepared the basic structure of HTML document. Inside head element I have two links, one for Google font, I'm going to use a font called Doses, and another for CSS file. Besides that, I have inserted here script tag in order to link JavaScript file. Alright, let's start building HTML markup. Open div element, which is going to be a container, so let's assign to it class container. Then inside the container I'm going to open nav elements, which will wrap the entire content of navbar. Let's assign to it class navbar. Then inside it, at first I'm going to create a hamburger menu icon, so open div element and assign to it a class name hamburger menu. Then inside the div element I'm going to insert three div elements for three lines of an icon. Let's assign to it class name for common styling line, and also we need here another class name for individual styling, right, line 1. Then duplicate this line twice and change class names. We need line 2 and line 3. Alright, that's it about menu icon. For now it's not visible because we have just empty div elements without any styles. Next I'm going to create navigation. It will be represented by UL element. Let's assign to it class navList. Then insert in it li element. It should have class navItem. And finally we need here link element. Let's assign to it class name navLink, and also insert here first item home. Overall, I'm going to have 7 navigation items, so let's duplicate it 6 times and then quickly change the content. Right here, about us, then news. Next one is going to be gallery, then events, pricing, and for last one, insert here contact. Alright, so that's it about HTML. It's time to start styling. Let's go to style.css file. At first I'm going to create some reset styles. Let's get rid of default margin and padding from every element. Select them using asterisk. And then pass here margin 0 and padding 0 as well. Then I'm going to change font family for body element. So let's select it. And then insert here font family Doses sans serif. Next, let's take care of container. Set its width and height. As a width, let's write here 100%. As for height, I'm going to set it as 100% of viewport. So write 100 VH. Then as a background, I'm going to set an image. So write background, then we need here linear gradient. I'm going to use 3 different colors. First one is going to be RGBA 0, 0, 0 and opacity 0.4. Next, let's write RGBA 148, 48, again 48 and opacity 0.2, and then insert RGBA 167, then 67, 67 and opacity 0.4. Then inside URL indicate path of image, right, images, and select image called bg.jpg. As the position of background, we need center, and also pass here no repeat. And finally, I'm going to use background size property with value cover. Alright, so landing page is ready. We have here full screen background image, and now I'm going to take care of Hamburger Menu. As you know, it will consist of 3 lines and it should be placed at the top right corner of the page. At first, let's select the wrapper development, which has a class name, Hamburger Menu. Let's define its width and height. I'm going to set width as 35 pixels. As for height, let's assign to it 30 pixels. For now, icon still is not visible, and in order to fix that, let's assign to it some temporary background, let's say red. Okay, so now the icon is displayed. By default it's placed at the top left corner, but as I said, I'm going to place it at the top right corner of the page. For that, let's define its position as fixed. And then we need top position set as 50 pixels and right as 50 pixels. So now icon is placed at the top right corner, and finally I'm going to change cursor. Let's make it pointer. Alright, for now with parent div element we are done. It's time to work on lines. Let's go ahead and select them using common class name line. Then set its width as 100%. It means that line will take up the entire width of its parent element, which is 35 pixels. Next, I'm going to define height. Let's make it 3 pixels. And also change background color. Use here color chocolate. Okay, now lines are visible, but they are stuck to each other and we have to separate them. In order to achieve that, I'm going to use flexbox. Let's make Hamburger Menu flex container. For that, we need display flex. Then change flex direction. We need to place lines as a column, so we need flex direction column. And finally, in order to make some space between them, use justify content with value space around. Okay, so now lines are separated, and actually we can get rid of that red background. Alright, so menu icon is already created, and before we make it work, I'm going to customize Navbar. We should place it on the right side. So let's go ahead and select nav element with class name Navbar. At first, let's define its width and height. I'm going to set its width as 300 pixels. As for height, let's make it 100%. And then change background color. Let's use here color 262626. Okay, so in order to place Navbar on the right side, let's define its position as fixed. And then make top and right properties both 0. Alright, so Navbar is positioned in the right way. Now I'm going to take care of the position of navigation items. I want to place them perfectly in the center inside Navbar. And for that, let's use flexbox. Right here, display flex. Then in order to center items horizontally, use justify content center. As for vertical centering, use align items center. Okay, so items are placed in the center, and the last thing that I want to do regarding Navbar is to customize its shape, and I'm going to do it using border radius. Actually, this property can take 4 different values appropriate to 4 corners. I mean top left corner, top right, bottom right, and bottom left. So we are able to define different border radius for different corners. In this case, I'm going to customize the top left and bottom left corners. As for the rest of the corners, we won't touch them. So as a value of border radius of the top left corner, I'm going to insert here 20%. Then, as we said, top right and bottom right corners won't be changed, so we need to insert here zeros twice. And for the bottom left corner, I'm going to use 60%. Alright, so the shape of the navbar is customized, and now I'm going to style navigation items. Let's go ahead and select UL element. It has class name navlist. I'm going to place text on the right side. So let's use text align right. Next, let's select li element. It has class name navitem. At first, let's get rid of default bullets using list style none. And then create some space using margin 25 pixels. Alright, now we have to select the link element, which has class name navlink. Let's get rid of default styles using text decoration none. Then increase font size, make it 22 pixels. Change color, use here color EEE. Also, I'm going to make font lighter using font weight 300. Then create some space between letters using letter spacing 1 pixel. And finally, make text uppercase using text transform uppercase. Alright, that's it about navigation items. As you remember from the finished project, we're going to create some hover effects. On hover, we should display lines at the top and bottom of items. They will be displayed with a smooth transition and from the opposite directions. Actually, we're going to create those lines using after and before pseudo elements. Both of them will have some common styles. So let's go ahead and select both pseudo elements, write navlink before, then duplicate this line and change before into after. So first we need to define content as empty. Next, I'm going to define width and height. Let's set width as 100%. Then make height 2 pixels. And also change background color. Use here color chocolate. For now, lines are not visible because they are inline elements and therefore width and height are not applied to. So if we define their position as absolute, and then if we assign to the parent element, which is navlink, position relative, then both lines will be displayed. At a glance, we see here just one line, but in fact, both lines are placed side by side. Okay, next I'm going to define a left position for both elements as 0. Now both lines are taking the same spot, and in order to separate them, we have to define a bottom position for after pseudo element, and we have to make it 0. So let's copy this selector and assign to it bottom 0. So now both lines are separated. As you know, by default top position is set as 0, so if we do not define it manually, that won't be a problem. But anyway, I'm going to define it, so let's duplicate this code. Then change after into before. And instead of bottom, write top. Alright, the last thing that we want here is to create some padding, because the bottom line is too close to the item. So let's assign to navlink padding. On top and bottom, write 3 pixels and then 0 on left and right sides. Alright, that's it about lines. Now we have to create hover effect. By default, I'm going to hide those lines, and when we hover over the items, then those lines will be displayed smoothly from the opposite directions. In order to hide lines, I'm going to use transform, then scale X, and we have to set it as 0. So now, on hover, we have to increase the scale and make it 1. So let's go ahead and select navlink with hover. Then add here before. Duplicate the selector and change before into after. And then insert here transform, scale X with the argument 1. And finally, in order to make effect smoother, let's use transition, transform, 0.5 seconds. Alright, so if we hover over the items, then lines will be displayed. But as you can see, by default they start appearing from the center. It happens because transform origin property is set as center by default. So we need to change it for both lines. Let's assign to after pseudo element transform origin, make it right, then copy this code and paste it for before pseudo element, and instead of right, let's insert here left. So if we hover over the items, then everything will work perfectly. We have here a nice hover effect. Okay, so with navigation we are done, and next that we have to do is to make Hamburger Menu work. First of all, I'm going to transform menu icon into X. For that we have to change positions for first and third lines. As for the second one, it should be hidden. So let's go ahead and select line 1. We have to rotate line 1 by 45 degrees according to the Z-axis. To be more precise, for line 1 we have to use rotate Z minus 45 degrees. Let's duplicate this code. Change the class name, write line 3, and also get rid of the minus sign from here. As we said, we have to hide line 2, so let's select it and use here opacity 0. So as you can see, lines are rotated, but we don't have here any X. We have to take care of positions of lines. For that, I'm going to add here translate. Then as the value of X direction, write minus 8 pixels. As for Y-axis, we have to pass here 6 pixels. Let's copy it and paste for line 3. Instead of 6 pixels, we need here just minus 6 pixels. So now, as you can see, the problem is fixed and we have here X. Actually, this is not the default state of the icon. We have to make it X when we click it. In order to achieve that, I'm going to use a little bit of JavaScript. But before we write some JavaScript, I'm going to add 2 lines, new class name. Let's call it change. Then we will add this class to Navbar using JavaScript. And all of this stuff will happen when we click the icon. So let's go to script.js file and first of all create a new variable. Let's call it menu icon. And then select the div element which has a class name Hamburger Menu. For that we need to write document dot query selector and pass here class name Hamburger Menu. Then attach event listener to menu icon. Write menu icon dot add event listener. As the first argument, we have to pass here name of event, which is click. Then we need to pass here function, which is going to be an arrow function. And now we have to add to Navbar new class, which is change. At first, let's create a new variable, call it Navbar. It should be equal to document.query selector. Let's insert here class name Navbar. Then inside function write Navbar and use here property called class list. Now you may think that we have to use here method add, but in this case it won't work because when we click the icon, class change should be added to Navbar, but on next click it should be removed. And in order to achieve that, instead of add, we have to use method called toggle. Let's insert here class name change. So if we click the icon, then it will be transformed into X, and then on the next click it will get its default state. In order to make this effect smoother, let's go back to style.css file and assign to the line transition with values all and 0.8 seconds. So now effect became smoother, but I think we can make it even more nicer. Instead of rotating lines just by 45 degrees, we can let them make one whole rotation, I mean rotation by 360 degrees, and then rotate again by 45 degrees. So as the values, we have to insert here sum of 360 and 45, which eventually is 405 degrees. So now you agree that it looks much better. Alright, so we are almost there. The only thing that we have to do is to hide Navbar by default and display it on click. For that, let's change the value of right position and make it minus 300 pixels. So now Navbar is hidden, and in order to move it from right to left side, I'm going to use again class change. Let's assign to it right with value 0. Now if we click, Navbar will be displayed, but as you guessed, in order to make effect nicer, we have to use transition with the values right, then 0.8 seconds. And also I'm going to use here a function called cubic bezier, which allows us to create a custom transition. In this case, I want the effect to start slightly slower and to end it faster. For that, I'm going to pass here values 1, 0, 0, and 1. So now we can say that everything works perfectly. We have here nice and modern looking Navbar with some cool effects. So our project is done. I hope you enjoyed it and learned some useful things. If you liked this video, then please subscribe to our channel, thumbs up, comment below and click the bell to get notified about new upcoming content. Okay, see you in the next tutorial.